Here's a guy who built a career off the friendships he made, man.
There he is.
There he is in the flesh. Saw him in the hallway. Now he's in the studio. Jay Chandrasekhar.
What's up, my man? How
Welcome
are
to
you?
the
Hello,
show,
hello,
man.
hello.
Let me give you a Das Boot, please.
No, you give that to him when it's time to go. That's yes.
Oh, yeah. Right. Yeah, after you leave. Okay,
Hey,
sorry.
we had fun being it.
Yeah, nice knowing you, Das Boot. Hey, pleasure, man.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure.
Big fans of what you do, man.
Thank you very much.
You know, it's funny. We were watching. Well, we watched you for years, but we were watching one of your appearances recently before you got in, and because we expect you to be funny all the time, I feel like I don't know when to take you serious, right? And you were talking about your name.
On what? Colbert.
Yeah, and I'm like, is he? And then he is serious, but I don't believe him because I'm waiting for a joke.
Here, listen to this. There's a clip where you talk about what your name really means. Take a listen.
I mean, he knows.
Yeah,
And is the J your full name, or is that a contraction or something like that?
Well, my full name is Jayanth Jambalingam Chandrasekhar.
It's beautiful. That's beautiful.
The name literally translates to victorious, large penis, rising moon.
and I said,
Like, that's Jay.
and
He's
I said,
hysterical.
and I said, what an amazing name.
Yeah.
I mean, is there a rough translation to a giant penis in your name?
Well, you know, I only found out about it when I was 23 or 24. I'd made a short film.
But the ladies found out about it earlier than that.
Well, they did, but like, you know, I called my mom because in the short film, I put the name Jambalingam as my editing credit because you know I just wanted to sort of hide all the whatever things I was doing in the movie, and my friend is Indian and his mother watched the film, and she started laughing and said, "Do you know what that word means?" And so she told him, and he called me. He goes, "Do you know what your middle name means?" And I said, "No, I don't." And he tells me, and I call my mother. I'm like, "Does my middle name mean large penis?" And she goes, "Well, literally, yes." She goes, "But it's a euphemism for power." And I'm like, "Mom, I'm an Indian kid growing up in the suburbs of Chicago. It would have been awesome to know my middle name meant large penis. I could have done a little bit better."
I mean, that's something a kid needs to know.
But I think that's perfect for a guy though who you know was in a comedy troupe. Like you can't write that stuff; it just happened, and I think that's awesome.
No,
man.
and when Colbert said he wanted to talk about it, I was like, "This is the perfect platform."
Oh, that's great. That's great, man. So first off, congratulations on all your success, man. You know, I feel like you've been doing it for so long. How does it feel for you? Like you started in college with the comedy troupe. You know, you did your own movies. You made them all on your own. Does it feel like it's been a long time?
You know, I started the comedy group when I was 21, and so we were all in college together, and there were no Indians in TV or movies. I mean, Peter Sellers played an Indian. They put him in brownface.
Exactly. Yeah.
In Short Circuit 2, they put Fisher Stevens in brownface.
And I swear he was in the end. You know, when I was a kid.
Well, I mean, my father, when I was young, he goes, "You have to see Short Circuit 2." And I was like, "Why?" He goes, "There's an Indian in it." And I'm like, "Dad, that's not an Indian." And he goes, "Well, it's as close as we'll get."
I'm standing here beside myself. That was like the line, right? Everyone, I thought it was.
It was an insane proposition for me to go into show business, considering, I mean, Ben Kingsley was the only one.
I'm so glad you said this too, because we just had this discussion yesterday, Rich, about you know, letting your family down or sort of
Following the path that they may have thought you were going to take.
Your parents are doctors and your sister's a lawyer, right?
Yeah.
So
we were saying, especially in Indian and Asian cultures, it seems like it's always the story of like, and he wants to be a comic.
That's you.
Like that is your legit story.
Well, yeah.
So what was that like? Was it like a coming out, like, Dad, Mom, I don't want to be a doctor? Like, what was that like at the time?
There were no Indian comics either. I mean, it was like, you know, there wasn't one.
Right.
I am the Jackie Robinson of Indian comics.
Wait, do you get the credit for that you deserve?
Well, honestly, because you look on Netflix now, and there's so many
brown guys.
so many great
plenty
Indian
of them now.
men and women that are in the comedy scene now. So you must think to yourself, maybe you are the fucking Jackie Robinson.
Yeah. I mean, granted, I didn't have to have people hurl racial insults at me.
But we get it.
But you get it.
But it's a great analogy,
Right, I get it. So did you have to sort of win them over? Did you feel were they mad about that at the time?
I was like an odd duck Indian kid. Certainly, growing up, I was like, you know, I started drinking early. I started, you know, doing drugs fairly early.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, and I also I worked at the last minute and got B pluses. Really, I didn't get A's. And I I'm like this B plus Indian, and nobody really. They're like, well, what's wrong with you, right? Why are you
the B plus Indian?
Why are you rolling through these B pluses? And so my parents were like, what do you want to be? And I'm like, oh, I'll be a heart surgeon, right? I mean, that was my plan going into college because of MASH. The guy was a heart surgeon.
Yep.
And I was like, okay, I'll do that. And I took organic chemistry my freshman fall, but I was drinking a lot. And so I got the class met at 8 o'clock, and I got a C minus. I showed up once every 2 weeks, and I got a C minus. And they said, we have to retake it if you want to stay in pre-med. And I'm like, I'm not retaking this thing. And so I said to my dad, I'm like, I think I'm not going to be a doctor. And he goes, you clearly never had the drive. I mean, he goes, if you want to be a doctor, you got to love medicine.
Right.
And he goes, of course you shouldn't be a doctor. And I said, well, I'll be a lawyer. And he goes, okay, good luck with that. And then when I finally said, well, I'm going to be an actor, my parents apparently said, we're just going to let it ride for about 3 years, and when he fails, he'll come and go to law school and deal with that.
But, looking back, too, you have to say, wow, that was really cool that they allowed me, without making me feel like, I was letting them down, do what I wanted to do.
Yeah,
right? Or follow my own path.
They were so unique in that, like Indian parents by no means are generally that supportive.
Right. That's great.
Generally, they're like, you have to be fucking crazy.
And it's so funny. We just coincidentally just talked about this yesterday. Yeah. You're the exact guy that did that had to sort of break that news to his family. Like, I don't want to be a doctor and do that sort of thing. Now, Broken Lizard, the comedy troupe, you're in college now. Well, that evolved into it, right? You changed. It was something else in college.
It was Charred Goosebeak in college. That group is still going. And we moved to New York after we graduated, and then we were waiting for the other guys to graduate the next year. And then we reformed as Broken Lizard in New York City.
Now, you're writing, you became a director and all that stuff. How do you start selling all your pals on your goals? Like, I feel like I could be wrong, but you were like the guy they believed in. Like, this dude, if we follow his path, we could actually make a movie.
I mean, Colgate I was an actor at Colgate, right? But there was no comedy group. There was no real major theatrical scene there. So I when I started the group, I just called all the funniest people I knew. And I said, we're going to put on a comedy show. Yeah. And they're like, what the fuck are you talking about? I'm like, just trust me. I mean, you like Monty Python, you like Saturday Night Live. We're going to write a show, and we're going to put it on. And somehow I convinced enough of them that they went for it. And when we wrote the show, we didn't really know what we were doing, but I mean, it was a big hit right out of the gate.
When you, I always found this fascinating with you and your crew, and Sandler and his people, and Judd Apatow and his posse. Like, it's amazing when friends have a vision together, and then one day you're probably like, oh my God, all of us are doing big things.
Right.
Like, these are movies and concepts that you guys probably thought of when you were like sitting around drinking or smoking or something, and you're like, and it's on the big screen and people love it. It's got to be a weird feeling.
We go on these 40 city college tours, or whatever, city tours, like with Super Troopers 2. And, they're putting us up at nice hotels and they're flying us around, and you're like, and you look over and you're like, that's my fucking college buddy right there. And it's astonishing. Like,
I love that part of the story always.
If you stick around long enough, you become one of the people they look to for a movie, for a comedy movie. Like,
right.
You're like, a party says, well, I don't really belong here, right? I get Sandler and I get Judd Apatow, but I don't actually belong here. But then the Fox says, what are you going to do next? I'm like, you paying? They're like,
you're saying you do belong there, but you feel that way. So you have to imagine the other guys feel that way too.
Of course they feel that way.
Right? Like, how did it happen?
I mean, it's like we created a machine where us, our friends, write our own jokes. I direct the movies, and they come out in theaters. Somehow.
It's amazing.
Somehow that happened.
And that process has changed. You've been in it long enough where the process has changed. The Indiegogo stuff that I do want to talk about. So I'm a Beer Fest guy.
Me too.
I don't know if they
I think that's our best film.
Is it really?
Yeah.
So I got to say, are you doing another one of those?
We're talking to Warner Brothers about allowing us to do another one of those.
So
they
that's your
control the
best-
rights.
I'm
They control the
interested-
rights.
It's crazy you would say that because, listen, Super Troopers is fantastic. So many
Yeah.
people love it. I love Super Troopers.
It's the most quotable now.
But I'm with you, though, on, for some reason, I think Beer Fest is fantastic. It doesn't get enough credit.
Yeah, it does from a certain crowd. For a while, all of our fans were, they're basically stoners. And then slowly it started to be stoners and cops. And then suddenly all these sort of like clean-cut Republican types were coming up to me, and they're like, "Oh, I love that movie Beer Fest." And I'm like, "Oh, thanks." And they're like, "I heard you made another movie, like a stoner movie." And I'm like, "Super Troopers?" They're like, "Yeah, that's it." There was this like cleaving of people. I mean, they blended together now for sure.
Right,
but
right.
Initially, it was like this, just a different crowd.
Such a great movie, and I feel like it's one that got a lot of TV airtime, right? Who plays it all the time? Is it like Comedy Central that plays it all the time?
Yeah, Comedy Central. It's on HBO.
Like I think it's one of those that like even your dad watched a million times because it's on TV so often.
Listen,
you know?
there's movies that reap the benefits of what you're talking about. Because when you were a kid, there's certain movies that played a lot. And as an adult, there's certain, you're just flipping through the channels and you're like, oh, Beer Fest is on. I'll keep it on. Super Troopers is on. I'm not going to change it. I'll keep it on.
Yeah, I remember sitting in the Hamptons and I was watching TV and this Michael Keaton movie Multiplicity came on, and basically he keeps doubling, and each new version of him is a dumber version of him, whatever the thing. And I watched the whole movie, and then it ended, and I watched the credits, and I'm sitting there and I'm kind of smoking a joint, and then the movie starts playing again. I'm like, all right, and I watched the whole movie again. So
Jay hanging out with us on the Covino Rich show. Super Troopers 2 is what we're going to talk about. But, we're before you got here, we're talking about dynamics. We've been doing this show for almost 15 years now.
Yeah.
And our producer, he's been with us for over 11 years. You guys have been doing it for so long. So it's like a two-part question. Who's in the original troupe? How does that work? How do you keep your crew close?
Is there anyone that was originally part of what you do and they bailed out
Right.
just before things got good?
Tell us about the dynamics, the
Isn't that
friendships.
the fun story?
Yeah.
No, I mean, I called. Basically, what happened was I'd gone to Chicago for a semester because I told my parents, I'm like, I'm going to make a run at being a comedian. And I said, but, I can get laughs from my friends at Colgate, no problem. But I got to go to like out in the public and see if I can make strangers laugh.
Yeah.
And if I can make strangers laugh, I'm going to make a run at it. And so I went to Chicago, where I'm from, suburbs, and I joined up with this thing called the Improv Olympic. And it was at the time it was Chris Farley was in the top group and I was in the bottom group. And so I would watch Farley's improv shows, and they
Slate,
were
probably right.
They were. He was the funniest guy in the country.
Yeah.
And every show he did with his group, Dave Koechner and all these guys, they killed. They absolutely murdered.
But that's almost unfair, though, because, what a guy. How are you going to compete with that?
Well, he did his time
Right.
and learned how to do it. Now, I was in a group with all the like new people in the class, and they're like, okay, you guys are a group. And we went up, and it was 35 minutes of grinding hell. The audience was dead silent for the most part because we were not good at it. And I was like, well, this is really not working, right? So I'm like, if I am going to get laughs, I'm going to go. So I signed up for an open mic across town, and I wrote 10 minutes of jokes, and I went up on a Tuesday night, and I drank like 5 Tom Collins. And I got the runs in the bathroom of that place, and then I went up and I did my 10 minutes of jokes in 5 minutes.
So basically, you had the nervous shits.
Oh yeah, and I had the nervous shits for honestly for 12, 15 years.
I love hearing that.
Of stand up. I no longer get them.
You're past it
But
now.
for years, I've shit so many awful comedy club bathrooms, and you're like, and it's always like, you're like, God, what is wrong? And it's just inner
But
awfulness.
once you get it out, you feel a lot better.
Oh, a lot
Right,
better.
Right, a lot better.
And so then I would, and then I said, okay, and I got laughs, right? And so I did more stand up, and I got more laughs. I mean, it wasn't perfect, but I got real laughs from strangers. And then I would go do this improv, but the improv was just not working. And I'm like, maybe, I don't know. I don't know. This is not going to work. So I went back to Colgate, and this guy who had a theater program he was going to London. He had started this student theater group called Kinetic Theater, and he was going to London. And he wanted to keep the Kinetic Theater going. So he said, I'm going to stage 4 one-acts, and you should do that comedy group thing that you were talking about that you did in Chicago. And when I went back to Colgate, I was bragging about Chris Farley, and I was really good at improv, and I was one of the best improv. Oh, it's just bullshit, right?
Indian Jackie Robinson.
Exactly. It's like, it's in Chicago. Who's going to check me, right? And this guy was like, how you're talking about how good that comedy thing was. You should do it here. And I'm like, yeah, I should do it here. Yeah. So I went to Kevin Heffernan, who plays Farva and all this. And he and I were in a fraternity together. And I went to him and I said, hey, man, you want to put on a comedy show for the Kinetic Theater? And he goes, comedy show? I'm not doing a comedy show. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. I don't know what I was thinking, right? So I called the guy up and I'm like, dude, we're not doing a comedy show. And he goes, oh, okay, that's surprising. So over the summer, I end up we're off and I'm back in Chicago. I go to Grateful Dead show and I would camp for 4 days and I drop acid and I'm like, in a little bit of a jelly-headed space, right? And I get back to my house. This dude from the Kinetic Theater calls. He goes, I need you to do the comedy show. I got 3 one-acts. You're the 4th. I need you to do it. I'm like, yeah, okay. I think I'll do it, right? So I call Kevin. He's a dishwasher in Nantucket. And I'm like, dude, we're doing the comedy show. He goes, I already told you we're not doing a fucking comedy show. He goes, you know how cynical people are at Colgate? They're going to laugh at us. We're not doing a comedy show. I'm like, yeah, I don't know what I was thinking. So I called the guy back. I'm like, we're not doing a comedy show. So then we go back to Colgate. It's our senior year now. I'm like in the fraternity house, fucking drinking, whatever. The payphone rings. Someone's like, hey, you got a phone call. I pick it up. It's this guy calling from London. He goes, it's a done deal. You're doing the comedy show. That's it. You're doing the comedy show. I'm
It's
like,
happening.
I'm like,
You didn't
fuck
have a choice here. I
I'm like,
guess.
all right. So I hang up. I walk up to Heffernan's room. I'm like, it's a done deal, pal. We're doing the comedy show. And he goes, oh, fine. Fuck it. Right? So that's how it started.
Yo, he owes you so much. Actually, you owe the guy from London for pushing you that
I
hard.
owe him big.
He owes you because you were relentless as a friend.
That's right.
So you did believe in him and all that. But, it's so weird, too, because you guys did it together, like we said. They're college friends. They're making movies now. But you've met so many people along the way, the Will Sassos of the world that I can't even imagine, working with. I was looking at all the names because I'd want him to be Curly or Tony Soprano the whole time, with his great impressions.
Oh, yeah.
How do you cash in favors when you've worked with so many different people? Like, do you have to pay them since you're the guy? Or do you rely on favors in your business?
Well, this business runs on friendship. Like it's really a matter of
Hear that spot? Hear that friendship.
because the problem is when you call in most movies, when you call an agent up and say, okay, I'm making a movie and I'd like your client in it, the first thing they'll do is they'll go, yeah, great, and they'll never call their client, and there's some weird system. I mean, look, the agents have to make decisions based on what they think is good for their clients. I get it, but that's not an easy way to go. Ultimately, it almost never pans out.
Right.
So the best way to go is, I worked with Rob Lowe on his show, The Grinder. So, I shot 4 of them. And
Best show that ever got canceled.
Best show.
Well,
Arrested Development.
Well, you directed a lot of those.
Yeah.
Right?
So
Yeah.
I directed a lot of Arrested Development, a lot of Grinder. And after the 4th, I directed the finale of The Grinder, and we were we were just hanging out after that, and he was in, his trailer smoking a cigar, and I said, hey, we're making Super Troopers 2. Is there any chance? He goes, any role, I'll play any role.
Wow.
Right? Because we were friends.
But you don't know if he's giving you the spiel, right?
But at that
You
point,
know
you're
what?
thinking,
The spiel is this. Hey, man, that sounds good. Why don't you send a script to my agent?
Then what's the reality?
Then he's not doing it.
No. Then how do you know that he was legit?
because
Though?
he actually
He
seemed
said,
like
I'll do any role.
And you
I'll do
believed him.
any role. And
Yeah.
Fred Savage was sitting there. He goes, what about me? And I'm like, we'll make it happen, right? So we kind of, we sent them the script. They both said, yeah, sure, we're in. And they, it's all about budget, right? Because everybody knows Mission Impossible 6 is going to pay you a lot. And everybody knows our movie is not.
right. Well, you know what I'm wondering too? The Indiegogo stuff funded Super Troopers 2, right? People waited for all these years for another one, and now we're hearing a third one, right? Aren't you working on a third one, Winter Soldiers or something like that?
We're going to have a first draft in a week.
At what point do you not sacrifice quality? How do you figure that out budget-wise?
Well,
Or do you not worry about that? Or is it all in the script? Where's your mindset when it comes to that?
You write the very best version of the joke. I mean, we make R-rated movies for that reason. We don't want to put in the third best version because we can't say fuck, right?
Right.
So we write the absolute best version of the joke, and if it's a stunt, we write the stunt. and you say, how do we tell this story on the budgets we're going to have? And eventually we may have a hard conversation with the producer and say, you can't do that. And you say, well, we can do this,
Okay,
right?
so my question is this then. Like Super Troopers 2.
Yeah.
How much better could it have been with a bigger budget? Do you necessarily need all that budget?
I would say none better.
Right, that's what I
that
mean.
movie is exactly what
Right.
we wanted it to be.
That's awesome.
Every
Now,
frame of it.
I just think of some of the shows you said you worked on. Now,
So many, bro.
I mean, some of these movies are fantastic, yet, traditional, I guess, movie companies are not saying, let me help you. You're doing a lot of it on your own. Grindr, Arrested Development, shows that got canceled that are fantastic. Do you take any of that personally, or do you know, hey, I make good shit, and it's just I have my own path?
There are two departments, right? There's the production department. That's us. We make the actual shows, and then there's the advertising department. And our job is to make great shows, and their job is to sell great shows. And it didn't matter. We knew we were making the best comedy on television when we had Arrested Development, and frankly, we knew The Grinder was great too. But sometimes the public isn't quite ready. It wasn't like they didn't try; they tried. I don't know what happened.
I'm like Arrested Development afterwards became more popular than it when originally aired.
Much
right?
more popular.
Much more popular. Now The Grinder. It sounds so silly, but I was devastated when that got canceled.
Yeah.
That was my favorite show on television. I was like,
He actually got me to watch it.
I was like-
I'm reluctant
I was like,
usually
you don't
most
get
times.
it. I was like, Rob Lowe, Fred Savage. I was like, this show is fantastic.
Yeah,
And
we had great writing. We had two great actors and many other side actors, and frankly, the people all the directors were pretty damn good. Scripts were great, and yet the country was like, I don't know about this.
It's fascinating.
And when you're, I mean, this is your fun and this is what you do, and to see your things come to fruition must be the greatest thrill ever. But you write and you have to put the pen to the paper and figure this shit out. Is weed a lot of your inspiration a lot of times to get the ball rolling?
It depends. Like, it's almost become a little bit of science for us, because you have to structure a film well. You have to build the foundation and outline the film well, so that you look at it and go, yeah, that's a movie. The flows and the hills sort of make sense. And then once you get that down, then you smoke a little grass and you go, okay, let's paint the colors. Right?
Is your perspective different now because you just turned 50?
Yeah.
So
Which, by the way,
I'd
I can't
imagine
believe you look great.
You look fantastic, but we always say like, we're like grown man boys. I feel like I'm the same now than I was when I was 20. So in your mind, you're like, I still know how to make a fun R-rated movie because I still have the mindset of a schoolboy. Do you feel do you feel that way too?
I think that the kind of movies we make, and the fact that we're still hanging out with guys I met when I was 18, we're in a state of Arrested Development to some degree. I mean, intellectually, I've become a much better filmmaker, but I understand. I remember being 10, 11, 12, 13 and going to these movies, and the language was racy, and there was some nudity, which I fucking loved, and they were maybe doing a little drugs, and I'm like, I like that. Like, that's what I like.
Yeah.
And so when we make movies, we're trying to make we also love Python, though. We're trying to make the smartest, most surprising movie you can get with some of these things, drugs and sex and language and wordplay. I mean, that's
and you're fantastic at it.
Shit.
By the way, we noticed when we were watching some clips, because sometimes you forget. We forgot that Gaffigan was the guy in the car for the meow thing. I don't know how I forgot that.
I wasn't sure it was him because he looks so young too.
Is that crazy?
Yeah.
I mean, have you bumped into him recently?
Well, Gaffigan auditioned for one of the local cops, and we already had them kind of cast. And so I said to him, he was really a nobody at the time. I said to him, I'm like, do you want to play this guy who's in this meow scene? He goes, all right, I'll do that. And
Meow scene.
because I don't even know if he'd ever been in a movie, but he said sure, and he did this thing, and he's such a great comic actor. And after that, I would run into him. He goes, do you have any idea how big this movie you've made is? And I'm like, I don't know. I mean, why? He goes, well, I'm doing stand-up, and my crowds are getting a lot bigger, and people are yelling meow at me. And I'm
That's
like,
awesome.
and obviously he's a hardworking guy, and he's a great comic, and he's done a ton on his own. But he said it sort of, his rise coincided with this scene.
Is that your best scene? The cat game in 2001 Super Troopers?
Is that the best scene we've ever done?
Yeah, in your opinion, because you said Beer Fest. What's your best scene?
The best
Is it
scene,
you playing quarters? 'Cause
my
that shit's great.
favorite scene we've ever done is actually in Super Troopers 2.
Wow.
When the Mounties are discussing Danny DeVito.
Okay, perfect. Because guess what, guys? It's available now. Special features, extended version, deleted scenes. We urge you guys to get it. Again, Super Troopers 2 on DVD and Super Troopers 3 in the works.
Super Troopers 3 Winter Soldiers.
Yeah, man. You know, when you're ready, come back, and then we'll hang out again.
I'm bummed because we have phone calls people want to talk to you, but I know you got to go. You have other shows to do. But
I know. So you're always welcome here, and that's not some bullshit. That's legit.
Thank
Let's
you.
make it happen, all right? Let's do this again.
Jay, huge penis. I'm sorry, what?
Can I plug one thing?
Please do. Of course.
I'm doing a comedy show at the Wilbur Theater in Boston on September 15th, The Late Show.
September 15th.
I'm a stand-up.
Wilbur.
I do stand-up, so
Yes.
tell
And
stories.
Guys, find him on Twitter and Instagram if you want more information, or Chandrasekhar.com. Jay, thank you for being on the show,
Thanks
man.
so much,
Thanks,
man.
guys.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much.